Welcome to Case Note Friday. My name is Fidana. I'm a family law solicitor practicing in Sydney, Australia. And today I'm going to talk to you about one of my old cases. It's a case I've never forgotten. I call it the pothead because the husband was a pothead, meaning he used to deal in weed and he went to jail for it. But let me start from the beginning. So in the year 2000, it was the Sydney Olympics, a time when all young girls who were in their 20s and 30s, including me, were very excited that all the hottest most fit athletes in the world were coming to Australia, that is Sydney, our hometown, and perhaps we'd get to meet one of these charming young men on our, clubbing days. So young Sue was exactly that. She was 30 years old. She was excited to be out and about clubbing, looking for her Olympic athlete on a night out during the Sydney Olympics. She goes out clubbing. She manages to find a young man called Arthur. Now, when I say young, Arthur was 40. He wasn't in the Sydney Olympics. He was just a regular guy from Sydney who happened to be out at the time when she was hunting for a husband from the Sydney Olympics. That didn't pan out. But she meets young Arthur. They hit it off. He's 10 years older than her, but whatever. He was charming. He was nice. He was splashing the cash. And she thought, okay, maybe I'm onto a good thing. So they hook up. Now, at the time, he lived in a lovely rental by the water, and she was living in a shitty flat with a flatmate and decided that she would move in with him. She didn't know him that well. They'd only been together for 3 months. She decided to move in with the boyfriend, Arthur. So she does that. Once she's there, she realises that he's into criminal activity. She kind of turned a blind eye to it, but she knew that something wasn't quite right because there was all these sort of strange people coming to their flat and there'd be all this cash splashing around him. And she knew that he was into dealing illegal substances, this is. But, as long as the cash was there, she kind of turned a blind eye. She was a seamstress and used to work from home doing alterations to people's clothing. So she had a little bit of money herself, but nowhere near the sort of cash that Arthur did. Anyway, before she knows, she's fallen pregnant after being together for 6 months and they're expecting a baby girl. Now, he didn't want to have a baby. The last thing in the world he wanted was a baby. And she was so excited to be pregnant. He thought he was too old to be a dad. He really didn't want to give up on not only did he deal the weed, he used to smoke the weed. So he was always kind of, chilled out dude and didn't want any parental responsibilities. Anyway, she stayed with him. They stayed together for 2 years. After the baby was born, she was doing everything on her own. He was being an arsehole. He started cheating with her. He was violent to her. And she realised that she just had to get out. She didn't know how to get out, but she knew that she was in this volatile relationship that wasn't good for her daughter and she needed to get out. So it's the year 2002. Lucky for her, one day he dealt to the wrong person, an undercover cop. And before you know it, he's arrested for dealing, supplying, using, and is taken off to jail. And the sentence was extraordinary. He was put away for 20 years. I think there was a non-parole period, but he was a violent criminal and stayed in jail for 20 years. Meanwhile, her and her daughter are having a great time without him. She's got her lovely daughter. She's a single mum. She's 32. She's in her early 30s. Things are great. When she's 35, she inherits a lot of money from her aunt. Her aunt was her mum's sister who didn't have any kids, and she inherited about $700,000. She was very smart and in the early 2000s purchased herself a lovely house. A house in a lovely suburb in the eastern suburbs called Vaucluse. It was like the worst house in the best street. Clevers. So she has her lovely house in a beautiful suburb and she's raising her daughter thinking life is great. She's working as a seamstress. She's got a house with no mortgage. Life is great. However, after 20 years of being incarcerated, Arthur shows up. He shows up and sees how well she's doing. The daughter's now an adult. She's living in this beautiful house in an extraordinary suburb. And you know what? I forgot to say that they were married. In the 2 years, they bloody got hitched in like an informal, I won't say in City Hall. That's an American thing to say. But they basically, he proposed to her and they got married. And it was because she didn't want to have an illegitimate child. She wanted the baby to be born when they were married. So they got married just as a formality. There was no wedding. There was nothing. She just basically got married, got the certificate of marriage to say that they were a married couple. So while he was away in jail, they were married that whole time. And she completely just put it out of her mind, wanted to block out that period with Arthur because she just didn't want to think about the big mistake that she made marrying him. And of course, she had her baby girl. So, it wasn't a total disaster. But he knew all those years hanging around in jail that they were still together. So in family law, if you never have a settlement with someone, you don't divorce them, you've got a claim. So, yeah, this is the horror story. Arthur, after all those years, comes to her and says, oh, you've done well for yourself. I'm an old man now. I have nothing. I can't get a job. I don't want to go back to my previous criminal activity. So you know what? I'm making a claim. I'm making a claim on the house because it's got no mortgage. She sat on it for all those years. She'd been doing it up gradually over the years. It was lovely. And he was a man of straw. He had absolutely nothing. So she then comes to see me. Wait, get out of the way, Arthur. She comes to see me, her lawyer, and says, Fidan, I need your help. My ex-husband my husband, because they're not ex-husband, has come out of the woodwork and is now making a claim on my house. What am I going to do? And I'm like, why didn't you divorce him? And she's like, he was in jail. How was I supposed to know I was still supposed to divorce him? I didn't know I could serve him. I didn't know how to do it. I filled out the papers and it was all so hard. And I just kind of hope he'd die and wouldn't bother me again. He didn't want anything to do with our daughter all those years. He never contacted me once, never sent a letter, didn't do jack. I didn't get any child support from him. I got absolutely nothing. How can he come after me after all these years and make a claim on my house? That doesn't seem fair. And I'm like, you're right. There's laws about this. And firstly, he has a claim. But just because you have a claim doesn't mean you're going to get something in the court. But he managed to find himself a lawyer who said, I'll get paid at the end. They did it on spec. That is, I'm pretty confident I can get some money in this case and we'll get paid. That is, the lawyer said, we'll get paid at the end from your share. So he took her to court. I was her lawyer in the court case. Now, when we're in the court, I said to her, she's got lots and lots of arguments. One, he made no contributions. He made no financial contributions. He made no non-financial contributions. They were only together for those 2 years. He made contributions in the 2 years they were together. When they first conceived the child, as I said, she was working from home. He did have a lot of money, but it was proceeds of crime. It wasn't legitimate money. However, because it was so long ago, it was very hard to prove what was drug money and what was his money. So he was saying that in those early years, he supported her. She moved into his flat. She didn't pay the rent. He did. He made contributions 20 years ago for 2 years. That's all he had, right? But in family law, in a marriage, it's not just about contributions. We do look at contributions. We also look at your future needs. And his future needs were higher than hers. She had no child under 18. She was working. She was living in an unencumbered house. Whereas he had no job, no prospects, no money, nowhere to live. And he was older than her, 10 years older. So his income and capacity was reduced. So he had a pretty good future needs claim, sadly. Her assets in total, what she'd accumulated, she was worth $3 million and he was worth zero. He was on Centrelink payments. So he was making a claim on her $3 million. Now, I said to her that the money you pay me in legal fees, you may as well give to him as an offer just to get him to fuck off, basically. Some fuck off money. We do that from time to time in family law. And I said, maybe we give him 20, 30 grand. It's a lot of money to him. Maybe he'll take it and go and not fight this case because this court case is going to cost you $100,000 in legal fees. If we can get away with it cheap, giving him 20 or 30K, then it might be worth doing because even if you go to court and you win, you still have to pay your lawyer and our barrister. So she said to me, no, I don't want to offer him 20 or 30,000. I absolutely don't. Let's offer him $5,000. So I acted on instructions. I offered him $5,000. His lawyer said, get fucked. And the lawyer had already accumulated $30,000 in legal fees. So I knew that the offer had to be at least $30,000. I couldn't get the instructions from her. And when I told her my fees to take the case to trial were about, I think it was $70,000, she said, I don't want to use you, Fidan. I want to get a cheaper lawyer. I'm going to go to legal aid. And I said, but you've got a $3 million house. You're worth $3 million. Legal aid's not going to help you. And she said, I just don't want to pay that sort of money for the legal fees. I'm going to represent myself. So sadly, I was terminated from the case. And she said, I'm going to represent myself. I can do this. She was arguing Stanford, which is what I told her. That is, the court shouldn't give him anything. He's not entitled to anything. She was arguing the domestic violence. Another point that she was able to argue, he shouldn't get anything. He made no contributions. He had future needs, but so what? What about her? What about her future needs? She raised that child on her own with no child support for 20 years. She had all these really good arguments. I absolutely loved this case and was very sad that she didn't want to pay me to take it on. In any event, she ran the case. They went to trial. That lawyer who she hired, him, I caught up with him a couple of years later because I was always wondered what happened. And he told me she fought it and the court gave him 10%. So she had to pay him $300,000. I always think to myself, had she kept me in the case or had she let me make that offer, we could have got away with it so much cheaper. Anyway, that's the end of the story. I think about this case from time to time.